Hello, hello! Here we are again. I'm excited. I got something that inspired me that I want to share with you. Let's get it! Get up!
My friends and my family, this is Trevor Chapman. Modern day man, entrepreneur, achiever, purveyor of the good life, student of life, marketer. After over 10 years in business, tens of millions of dollars, I've learned this one thing. There's too much noise. It takes tactics and strategy. You can't buy it, you earn it through experience. Failure after failure hones the craft. You must become a warrior. It's time to run. The experience you can't buy. You had to have earned it. It's my turn to give back and contribute. I share all of my lessons from 7 to 8 and from 8 to 9 figures. We'll see if it goes from 9 to 10, but I'm gonna give it all to you. Consistency, persistence, dedication, vision, time, discipline, work. I'm gonna give it all to you so that you learn from where I failed and you learn from my experience. My brothers, this is your daily fuel.
My friends, get energy in your life even if you don't feel like it. Master your state. Get in control. And then you will be happy, because I have found that the times I was unhappiest were when I had the lowest energy. And guess what the amazing thing is? Energy is not something that is bestowed upon you. It is engineered. But what's the message today? You know that I take my son climbing every year. And as often in between each major climbing trip that we go on, we try to go on more localized trips as well. And I do it because I have found that mountaineering, climbing, trekking, hiking, whatever you want to do, is one of the greatest analogies for life. I remember as a child, I'd be climbing in Alaska. And on the descent, I would imagine over and over and over all the different zip lines that would take me to the bottom quicker. One day in my 20s, I realized, whoa, I'm not imagining that anymore, because it was simply a waste of time. No zipline would ever magically appear on the side of the mountain and take me down. I just realized it. It wasn't something that I focused on. It happened. And I realized that what I had learned from one foot in front of the other is that there is no substitute for minimal advancement. In fact, the way you get to the top of the mountain is not by jumping in some helicopter, not snapping your fingers and appearing higher up. The guy that's on top of the mountain did not fall there, nor was he born there. Step by step, he trekked and climbed, sometimes inch by inch, regaining ground lost until he made it to the very summit. And that's, my friend, life. But one of the problems, in fact, a major problem that most entrepreneurs deal with is this phrase: that mountain that you're carrying, you were only supposed to climb. I look back, my friends, and I look back on a company I started called Trojan Security in Arizona. And that eventually turned into Prestige Security, which eventually turned into Smart Cali. But Trojan Security was a mountain I was supposed to climb. This was like my first, I had had these marketing companies prior, but this one was like my first real legit, like, you know, we had 1,000 customer base, we were protecting their homes, we were doing the installations. It was like more than just a sales organization, right? And I recall a moment in my office when all of a sudden I woke up in the morning and I looked around, and I was in my office. I was not in my house. I had worked until exhaustion, and on the way out to go drive home, I remember thinking, I'll lay down for 1 sec, and I didn't wake up until the next morning. Now, wonderfully, my wife knew that, like, when I get passionate and focus on something, that I become obsessive, right? But guess what? I look back on all that work now and I think to myself, dang, man, if you would have known then what you know now, you would have built something 100 times the size, because I wasn't climbing the mountain. I was literally carrying that mountain. And I wasn't making a mountain. A mountain smothers you when it's dropped on top of you. And it's so funny how often we turn the very mountain that we're supposed to climb to gain elevation, metaphorically, we start digging and putting it on our shoulders, and we start carrying it. We become the beast of burden instead of the master of the caravan. Now, I don't know enough at this point in time to tell you whether or not that is inevitable in the beginning. I don't know if everyone has to go through that in order to graduate. I simply don't know. But my question and my message to you is this. With your business, and if you don't have a business, let's call it your career, whatever your professional sphere involves, are you a beast of burden carrying it? Or are you the master of the caravan leading through the Gobi Desert or up the Himalayas, etc.? Are you climbing that mountain, or are you carrying that mountain? What are you doing? Tell me. Say it out loud. Do you really feel like you're climbing? Or do you feel drowned, shackled, chained? What started out as your passion turned into this thing this monster that you have to feed, and you're the only one that can feed it. Guys, even when my organization had over 100 people in it, I remember feeling shackled and chained. I was no longer carrying the mountain because I had many people walking up it with me, but I was still shackled and chained. So the question is, how do you get out of it? I want to know how I got out of it. I just read, man. I buried myself in books. Not at the expense of things I should be doing. I continued to do everything I needed to do. But I read about people further down from me, and I learned a lot from them. One book that really affected me, just because at the time of my life when I was reading it, I felt like I was uncharacteristically low on energy. Uncharacteristically stressed. And that book was The River of Doubt by Theodore Roosevelt. He had just lost the election, and he went down to go map out a river, a tributary of the Amazon. But he did it as an escape. Because the man that should have been free on the top of the mountain found himself underneath the mountain. And it's so funny because it seems to me, with my limited experience, that it is a mindset type of thing. One of the greatest gifts that my wife ever gave me was when we were first married. She continued to say, be a transitional character. And now she tells me to find gratitude in everything. Right now, it's the seasons. I'm not a fall kind of guy. But let's go back to business and end with these two phrases, okay? The mountain that you're carrying, you were only meant to climb. When did it turn into you carrying it? Because success still, in whatever form that you want to call it, still lies on the top, on the summit, on the peak. It may be a high altitude climb, it may be a technical climb, it's still up there, it requires different skill sets, right? What is causing the mountain to be on top of you? What turned you into Atlas? And how can you shift? Let me tell you one good way. My brother-in-law, I got into the solar industry, and I'm going to end with this, my friends. My brother-in-law, I got into the solar industry, and he started designing all of our CADs, are like the electrical, the one lines, like when you engineer it, right, on paper, and then you have to submit that for permitting. I got him into that, and he started doing it for my company and then for others, etc. I met him about a month ago, and I was like, dude, talk to me. And he said, life is miserable. I spend all my time doing these CADs, and I hate it. So in other words, what started as a income supplement turned into him carrying the mountain, not walking up the mountain, him carrying the mountain. He can't leave it because the mountain's on top of him. It feeds him. It helps him. He's also going to school full time. But he is carrying the mountain. I found that typically you start carrying the mountain when you've leveraged yourself into the imperative piece of the puzzle. Meaning you've leveraged yourself into absolute everything. You're critical. You leave, everything falls apart. That's how you carry the mountain, right? And so I listened to him, and I could see that he truly was low on energy. Entrepreneur speak for like unhappy, depressed, right? Because it just happens. It's just symptoms. So let's call it low on energy so that we don't ever have to admit that we're depressed. Anyway, because depression, guys, in my 99 times out of 100, it's not some actual clinical thing. It's a mindset thing. I may get flack for that, but that's my belief. Sorry. So I said to him, all right, let's fix this right now. I jumped on Upwork.com. I searched solar CAD in the Philippines because I found, this isn't any racial statement, but I found that the best work I've had with freelancers and virtual assistants is out of the Philippines. And I found him someone who's been doing CADs for like 5 years. I connected the two of them. He charges, I want to say $80 a CAD. And so he's like, what should I pay him? Like 40? I'm like, no. The average income over there is $200 a month. Pay him $8 per unit, per CAD completed, which takes about 2-3 hours. He did that. I met him a few days later, and he's like, dude, you've already saved me 17 hours of my life. And he was looking at trucks with us because he's a big truck buff. That Saturday, he would have been doing CADs. But someone else was doing them, and that person was grateful for that work because they were carrying their mountain. This allowed them to walk up it, and this allowed him to walk up the mountain. Win-win situation. And he started climbing the mountain again. Stop leveraging yourself underneath the mountain and start climbing the mountain. And the last one is this. No one that's on top was ever born on that mountain, nor did they fall onto the top, nor did they stumble onto the top. They didn't accidentally summit, nor were they granted it by their fairy godmother. One step after another. Some summits are smaller, and you can summit them in a day. Some take a lifetime. Decide on your mountain and commit to getting on the top. And remember, you can't get to the top of your mountain if you are carrying it. All my love, all my respect. Until tomorrow, my friends, Trevor out.